Welcome to Find It. You found us again. It's Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we are here tonight with a very special guest, and his name is Martin Lopez. Don't get it twisted. J-Lo isn't here. Martin is, and he is the author of The Curiosity Theory. It's all about communicating. We got to communicate better. He's going to talk about why he wrote the book and a lot of other stuff. Hang tight. He will be right back with us. Martin, this is what I've been saying all week. And then I just found out when you came on that it's Martin. So I got to get it right. Let's make him big so we can see Martin.
I'm good either way.
Yeah. So how was your Christmas? How was your holidays?
It was really, really great. I got to hang out with my kids a little bit, hung out with my girlfriend, and played games, and we're just kind of mellow. We're mellow people now.
Yeah, well, that's good. You know, mellow's good, chill's good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed our holiday time and with our kids as well, and that's all good. I know I want to send out special intentions and prayers for DeMar Hamlin, who is still in critical condition after he's the Bills player. I just really felt the need to say that publicly. Yeah. It's on everyone's hearts, and it just brought everyone together. It didn't matter what side you were on. And that's a lot about communication too, right? I mean, you know, when big stuff hits, you realize what's important.
Oh, it's sad. It's one of those things that I actually feel viscerally about it. I can actually feel it, like that sadness about. It's scary. It's just really.
It is. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was intense, and I just pray for him and his family and everybody. But anyway, let's get on to you, Martin. I'm so glad you're here, and it's been a while working to get you on the show.
Thank you.
We had touched base a while back, and now I'm glad you're with us to tell your story and talk about the curiosity theory. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about what the book is about and why you wrote it?
Well, why I wrote it, when I was married back in 2016, one day I was driving home from work, and I don't work very far from where I live, and I live on top of a hill, and I was driving home, and I had my headset on, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to go to dinner. It was a Friday afternoon, probably about 4:45 or so. And the kids were out, football game, and, you know, we had money in the bank, and we had, you know, time to spend together. And so I was talking to my wife, and I said, you know, honey, where do you want to go to dinner? And she's like, I don't care, anywhere you want to go. I was like, oh, cool. How about let's go to eat some Vietnamese food? She's like, nah. I said, okay, so where do you want to go? She goes, I don't care, anywhere you want to go. I was like, all right, well, how about we go to the Venetian and get some, some Italian food, get some pasta and a glass of wine? She's like, nah. I said, so where do you want to go? She said, I don't care, anywhere you want to go. So just about this time, I'm almost home, and I'm like, and I actually asked her one other place, and she said exactly the same thing. I don't care where you want to go, but she didn't want to go there. And so, you know that your phone, you have like the little red button. So I hit that little red button and hung up on her. And when I walked in the house, like I said, I'm just a few minutes from where I live. So I walk in the house, and she's standing right there, and she said, did you hang up on me? I was like, oh, no, I didn't hang up on you. So we went back and forth for a second, and 5 minutes later, she's in the bedroom playing crossword puzzles, and I'm in the living room watching ESPN. And, you know, the thing is that this interaction and getting in a fight on a Friday afternoon was not untypical. It was actually pretty typical that we'd have that kind of situation. And I was real frustrated, and I got in the car and I drove down to the beach. I live right around the corner from the beach. So I drove down to the beach, and as I'm driving down to the beach, I'm just kind of going over the argument and the little fight that we had in my head. And I'm thinking, all you had to do is say yes. And we'd be in the car, and we'd be driving to, Vietnamese food, or, the Venetian or Old Town Max or wherever, we would just be driving. All you had to do. And I'm going to hashing this fight out. And as I'm doing that, I don't know if I'm talking out loud. I don't think I am, but it's kind of a loud conversation. I look to the side and I see somebody in the car next to me, and they're like looking at me. So I just totally snapped me out of what I was doing. And I thought, why are we fighting? It's Friday afternoon. We've been married for 16, 17 years. We have beautiful kids. We have a beautiful house. We live in a beautiful neighborhood, everything. We got everything. And I don't know why we're fighting. So I get to the beach and I journal a lot. I don't know. Do you journal,
I
Debbie?
love journaling. Yes, I do. I go in and out of it though. Like I'll journal like crazy for a year and
Yeah.
then, I'll take like a couple months and not at all. But yeah, I really enjoy it when I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to journal, and I looked in my backseat of my car and I didn't have my journal. So I was kind of frustrated. So I get out and I go to the beach, and whenever I journal, I'll put like a question mark in front of something I have a question about. It's just always done that. And somebody taught me that. So I was thinking, why are we fighting? And I would have, in my journal, I would have wrote, question mark, why are we fighting? Because that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, what are we fighting for? And I get to the sand and I put a question mark in the sand and I'm like, why are we fighting? And I just started going for a walk, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to meditate and just kind of calm myself down, and did a couple more question marks. And after probably about a half a mile, this memory showed up in my head. And this is really where the book starts. And you've read some of it. And the first story was when I was in eighth grade, and I had two friends, Mark and John, and we were like thick as thieves. And one day I walk in the cafeteria and I see this like little crowd, and it was Mark and John. They were fighting. And so I broke them up. And when I broke up the fight, actually I ripped John's shirt, and then John was going to hit me then.
Oh,
So like, whoa,
yeah.
like, and I
Yeah.
remember just backing out. He's like, and he was a lot bigger than us, Mark and I. So I back up like, John, why are we fighting? And it's funny. He just he looks at me like this, like puts his hands out. He goes, I don't know. And he just turns and walks away. Now, the thing about that is John's not the kind of guy that once he is fighting, he's hard to stop. That's the kind of
Mm.
guy he is. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I was thinking about that on my walk. And that was one of these thoughts that I had in my head forever. You don't have memories that just kind of sit there.
Pop, and then they pop in all of a sudden, like, where did that come from?
Exactly. And then so I'm walking, go, that's interesting. That's an interesting thing. Like, why are we fighting? It's like, okay, we got out of that one. And I'm walking a little bit further. And then I remember this incident happened when I was 30 years old. I used to be a real estate agent, and I had a client. Her name was Sylvia, and his name was Hector. And
I
Hector,
read about this.
what did you read about that?
In your book, I read this story and I was like, "Oh, that didn't go like I thought it was gonna go." But go ahead. You guys listen to this. This is so funny, but it's startling a little bit.
So I sold them a house, and they didn't have great credit, and they didn't have enough money. So everybody chipped in. I chipped in part of my commission, and got the other real estate agent got to chip in. The seller chipped in, and the loan officer dropped his fees a little bit so everybody can, so it could all work out. And so we closed escrow, and I was excited that we closed escrow. And what I do whenever we close escrow is I'll buy, like wine and, cheese and champagne and a gift card and all that. And I ask them for business. So I can hear them drive up because Hector has one of those monster cars, like those monster trucks. You can hear it's pretty loud. So as they pull up, I'm in the driveway and I like got a big smile on my, I'm probably like I said 30 years old, So I got a big smile on my face. I'm all proud of myself. And Hector jumps out and he gives me a big bear hug. And I see Sylvia walk around the corner, and she looks like totally frosty, like upset, And I'm just watching, hey Sylvia, and I didn't think I better hug her. So anyway, so we walk into the house and we're walking around the house and we're doing the inspection. I take them into the kitchen where everything's set up. And I say to them, Hector, Sylvia, you were referred to me by Elizabeth. Elizabeth works with Sylvia, and that's how I build my business. People like what I do, and then they refer me. And then, so if you like, and before I could finish, Sylvia's hand came up like that.
Talk
And
to
said,
the hand, buddy.
yeah, like she said, Martine, we won't be referring you anybody. I was like, whoa, and like what so I'm thinking about all the stuff that I did, like I gave them money, and I like got other people to give them money, and we worked hard, and we did all this stuff, and they got to keep the patio furniture, just all this really cool stuff. Like they got a great deal, and
Yeah.
I can go on. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my wine and my champagne, and I'm like, I'm gonna just take the stuff and just leave, And before I could do any of that, I just see Hector look at Sylvia, and he just puts his hand. He goes, honey, is there something wrong? And she starts to cry. And I'm like, whoa, I'm just watching, like, what's going on? She says, honey, ever since we got our offer accepted, and I get choked up when I think about this because it's such a real thing, you know. She said, honey, ever since we got our offer accepted, all I can do is think about that first moment where I'd have my keys and I'd be able to open my own door for the first time myself. And she looks at me, she says, Martina, I know I never told you, but when I saw you and I saw the house open, that dream just fell apart.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, I didn't know what to do.
Well, and two, though, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. You
Yeah.
didn't know that that was what was her dream in her head, and you were just being kind and got everything ready and the lights on and the champagne ready. So then what happened?
So then I remembered that the keys were still in my pocket. And I said, Sylvia, I haven't given you the keys, and you haven't signed these papers, which, and there were no, it was just like something she signs, but they weren't final papers. These are really the final papers you have to sign. And so why don't you go drive around before I could even finish, like drive around the block, before I could even finish, she just went out, she just took off out the door. Her purse was still on the chair. Hector grabbed her purse. He followed her. They jumped in the car. I could hear the big truck. And I locked up the house, turned off all the lights. And I went and stood by the curb. Now I'm not even on the property now.
Yeah.
I'm like standing by the curb. So I'm standing by the curb with the key, like, you know. So he pulls up and she's right there. She jumps out and she gives me a big hug and she's still like crying, but she's now crying happiness. And she's, I love you, Martina. And she takes her key and she just like runs over and opens the door and she's like, "Arr." And still to this day, she refers me business.
Oh, wow, that's good. But you know, the thing is, like, so as you're walking along the beach and you're thinking about when you're a kid breaking up a fight and ask, why are we fighting? And
Yeah.
then you think about this woman who had like a complete meltdown because the house was already open.
Yeah.
What did this do to you that triggered how you should handle maybe your circumstances or to write this book
Yeah.
while you were taking that walk on the beach? Is this where all this started
This is when it
firing?
all came together. So there was another story. It's my son's poop story. You read it in the book, but so it was like a third story I saw, and I was writing these little question marks, and I'm like, curiosity. I'm like, curiosity. That was it. Like when John was gonna pound me, I was like, John, why are we fighting, right? And I'm trying to figure out, why am I fighting with Yvette? And then I'm thinking, I saw Hector be curious with Sylvia. And then with my son, I was curious. I was like, curiosity, that's it. That's it. That's how you stop fights. That's how you go to the next level. So I was excited. So I ran to the car, got in the car. I drove home, got to the house, and Yvette was in the bedroom. I could tell she had been crying. And I said, honey, I'm just really curious. Can you tell me what I did to upset you so much today? And she looks at me and she says, yeah. And she starts to tell me what I did that day. And then she starts to tell me what I did that week. And then she starts to tell me what I did that month and the
Oh,
year. And pretty much by the end of the night, we ended up going out to eat Mediterranean food. We ended up going out to eat, and we sat in a restaurant and we talked all night. And it was just amazing because she told me all the stuff and a lot of stuff she had told me, I don't think happened, but I was still curious. I was not trying to defend it. I wasn't
mm,
trying to tell her she was wrong. I just listened to everything and I just stayed curious. I was like, wow. It was almost like I was watching somebody talk about me. And I'm like, really? Wow, wow. It was like that. And it was a shift in the way that I approached like conflict, like in that moment.
ooh, ooh.
So we got home, we had a great night, and she went to bed, and then I started to journal. So I journaled, and we probably got home about 11, 12 o'clock at night. About 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm still on the couch and I'm still writing. I probably fall asleep a couple of times, but I'm still writing. She gets up to go get a glass of water, and I say, honey, can you tell me why you said all that stuff to me? And she said, yes, because I felt safe and I felt respected. And I felt like I just, God, it almost makes me cry when I think about it every time. And it felt like I could trust you. I
So
was
do
like,
you think that in the past you were defensive and that made her feel unsafe?
I'm still defensive. It's not like I'm not defensive. I just understand the shift. I just understand like the little mechanism in here that when I become defensive, I become curious.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does explain elaborate a little more on that. So, like for I don't know how you can change defensiveness into curiosity if you're already amped
Hmm.
and I don't do that. I don't how can you back off of that once you're already defensive? I don't know. When I was thumbing through your book, I did see a diagram of the brain.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, and I think that's the chapter you probably explain a little bit about how that all works, but elaborate a little bit more in your thoughts and in your studies. How you have to become curious before you get defensive, or can you back off of defensiveness into curiosity?
Well, you can't be curious and fight at the same time. They just don't fit. So
Okay.
you can't like figure out like can't be sitting there like I'm gonna punch somebody and then try to figure out where you're gonna punch them. Punching is natural. The minute you become curious, you're no longer in the fight.
Okay.
Your brain disengages and you go from your reptilian brain to your cortex. It's like trying to figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is the brain will do it all. It's all biology. It's not psychology. It's all biology. So what your question, I would assume that your question was probably more of a psychological question, like how do you do
Okay.
this?
Yeah.
And the answer that I found is it's not a psychological question, it's a biological question. It's like something's happened to me biologically. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm getting present to like if my state's changing, like if I'm getting upset, I get present to like I'm experiencing the upset, right? So if I'm getting upset, if I have any degree of awareness, I'm experiencing myself being upset. So it's when I'm upset, I can either let myself go with the upset, just kind of like a thought you have in your head where you have one thought and it just goes and goes and goes. And next time you're thinking about, what's going to happen, with the Olympics in, 2065 or something, it's like, what, how did I get there? Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with our emotions. If we don't look at our emotions are going to shift for us. So it's the awareness is that noticing that you're actually having an experience. So if I'm having an experience of upset or I get triggered, then that notifies me rather than to go. If you look at the diagram, it says it's trigger, react, regret. So I get triggered, then I react, and I'm like, got it. I wish I didn't do that. I
Yeah.
wish I didn't do that. So when I got triggered when I was driving, I hit the button. That was a reaction. And then I saw it. I was like, and I knew it was a bad idea. I knew it was a bad idea, but I still did it. I walk in and she says, "Did you hang up on me?" I was like, oh, I knew I was right. I shouldn't have done that. But we still do those things, right? And I didn't know how to. So I just became very defensive in that conversation with her. And that's why we started that fight. So after that, I learned that the trigger, and we're
Mhm.
always going to get triggered, that the trigger was an opportunity to be curious.
Yes.
That's the opportunity. See, I can get triggered and I can fight. I can do that. That's automatic. But I don't like fighting. I don't need to fight. Why do I want to fight? I have an
Right.
ex-wife right now. She's a beautiful woman. I love her to death. And when we talk, we used to fight. We don't fight. We talk and we talk about life and we have a great relationship. And she says things sometimes I'm like, that's a really stupid thing to say in here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come out here. And it doesn't last in here. That's the difference. It doesn't, because the minute I start opining about her, I call it judging, blaming, or complaining. The minute I judge, blame, or complain about anybody, that second triggers me that I'm going down the wrong tunnel. I call it the regressive cycle. So then I don't want to do that. I don't want to regress in the relationship. I want to progress. So we'll go to the progressive cycle. So the way to do that is to be curious. So I'm going, and the minute I don't even get to that, like she's being and that's the judgment or that's the complaint or that's the blame, right? That's happening. And I'm going, oh, I'm curious. Why am I doing that? I'm curious. What's going on with me?
Yeah. It's being so self-aware
Mhm.
and stopping yourself and asking yourself why. Why am I feeling like I am? And I don't want to go to the regret part. I want to be able to handle what I have going on here. That's so true. And I would assume this takes practice. I think some people might be a little more naturally able to handle their emotions if they're not a super emotional person. I don't know, but this book is just I can't wait to read it cover to cover. It just came in today.
Thank
So
you.
I have to really go through it, but I did dog ear as I was flipping through, just like know thyself. And it's like that's find it's all about is finding yourself
Yeah.
too, not finding out other things as much as internally you.
Yeah, well, and then we kind of back up to what you were talking about. It's like it doesn't really. The cool thing about the curiosity theory, and cool thing. So the curiosity theory is the program we do in corporations and for women. So the corporations, the curiosity theory. So I'll do that with sales and customer service and leadership. The curiosity theory for women is the program I do for. It's a women only program. And then the men's breakthrough is the program that I'm really, really sinking my teeth into, which is for men. Now, this is the thing. The process of what we go through is natural. You don't have to manage it. I'll give you an example. You get triggered and you react. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And would you also agree that oftentimes you regret your reaction?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You don't have to manage that, right?
No managing at all. You just let it, it just flies out and you get the regret. Yeah.
Okay. So then this is what I discovered. So if you can think of a time that you were triggered, and can you go back? I'm not going to ask you to do it, but could you explain to me what happened?
Yes.
You could, right?
Yes.
So basically what you're saying is that you had an experience, you had you had something that happened that you could then tell a story about. So the only way that you could tell a story about something is that it happened, or at least it was your experience. So what I realized is you're actually like a trigger actually causes an experience. The experience happens before the reaction. So I had to
Gosh,
dissect.
I've never thought of it like that.
Isn't that cool?
It's so true.
And so you think about that. So, well, what's happening in the experience? This is really cool. You're gonna love this. So what's happening in the experience is that you have an observation.
Yeah.
You observe something like, okay, what I observed is, and an observation is like a story or a fact. Okay, that's what I use the word observation for. So the observation is that I'm having a conversation with Yvette and I'm asking her where she wants to go, and she's going anywhere you want to go, but it's not anywhere I want to go because everywhere I say is. So there's the story, right?
Yes.
That story causes an emotional reaction. Every story you have, every story I have, every story everybody listening on this podcast causes an emotional reaction. It's not a good one or a bad one. It's some kind of emotional reaction. It just does. Okay. And I call it yum or yuck. So we started with yum or yuck.
Yeah, I saw it when I was sitting there. I saw yum or yuck because you have diagrams and pictures. It's really cute. I love it.
So yum is when our needs are being met, and yuck is when our needs are not being met. So as I'm asking Yvette, where do you want to go to dinner? And she's saying, anywhere you want to go. So that's a yum. Oh, good. We get to go anywhere I want to go. So in that conversation, I'm like now experiencing a yum emotion. And I say, how about Vietnamese food? And she says, no. So now immediately I have a yuck experience. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
So, okay. So what is that tied to? That's tied to something I want or something I need. Like I like my momentary need is to go to dinner and go where I want to go. That's my need. And when she says no, my need doesn't get met. So I have an emotional reaction about that. Right. If she says yes, my emotional reaction is going to be, it doesn't have to be like a,
elated, like ah.
But it's something.
Yeah, it is.
There is an emotional reaction. So that emotional reaction is tied to a need, and you can't separate them. They're stuck together. They're just stuck together. You can separate them by looking at them, but you can't separate them by how you experience them because they're just tied together. So I learned that, and once I learned that, I realized that I can actually, I have something to say about my experience. So I can take the facts, which is she said anywhere you want to go. That's the fact. And then when I made a suggestion, she said no. That's just the fact. It's kind of a funny story if you listen to it. If you're not, right? Exactly. How do you say no to pho, right? No kidding. That's right.
Oh my God.
So that's the first part. So that's that is the observation, right? There's the fact, and then there's the story that follows it right there. So the story is like, oh my God, it becomes the complaint. The complaint then creates an emotion, right? The emotion tells me what need I'm not getting met. She doesn't love me. She doesn't respect me.
Right. Then you tell yourself stories based on your experience.
Yes. It just loops. It just goes.
Yeah.
And that happens all before you react without you having anything to do with it.
Yeah.
It's automatic. It's a survival mechanism. It's built into you. It's built in before your reaction. It's already built in. So once I saw that, I said, oh, I got to slow that thing down. And how you slow it down is you take a breath, you become aware, and you just get curious and you just look at it. You're like, she said, and you look at the facts, you look at the stories. She said, anywhere you want to go. When I said this, she said, no, I don't want to go there, or whatever she said. And the story I made is XYZ. And because that story, this is what it did. So because of all that, I hung up. I can start to put the pieces of the puzzle together,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then when I can do that, I can then see and choose, do I want to react or do I want to respond? And do I want to respond
Mm.
in a way that follows my virtues, that follows my values, that follows how I want to govern my own life, how I want my life to go? And then it just becomes a choice.
Mm.
So then people ask me, they go, yeah, but she's a jerk or something. They don't say that about her, but they could say that, like, well, she's being a jerk. I go, yes, but then that becomes a judgment again. See, so as soon as yeah, she's a jerk, well, there becomes a judgment, and now I have another set of circumstances and another set of emotions. But if I neutralize it and I just go, let me get curious, what was I doing? I got triggered. I got this. When I get triggered, I do this. And so rather than react, I'm going to respond. And then when I respond, I'm not going to regret. I'm going to be excited and celebrate.
Right.
And then this is the key right here. Celebration is the key. When you celebrate things that you do good, you rewire your brain to have those experiences again. Just like, do you have
That
children?
makes sense. That makes total sense.
Do you have kids?
Yes.
Isn't it fun to sing happy birthday to them?
Yes, it
It's
is.
just the best, right?
Yeah.
And so you look forward to singing happy birthday. You
Mhm.
sing it once and it's a celebration. Then you sing it again and again and again. And then the kids just sit there waiting for you to sing. They like, even me, I'm 58 years old. I'm like, sing.
Anybody gonna sing to me? Come on now.
But the brain is, we've wired our brain for that. So what we want to do, the curiosity there is, in men's breakthrough, is all about rewiring your brain so that your brain goes for what you want, the responses that you want, and the celebrations that you want, versus the reactions and the regrets that we can naturally get.
Yeah, so getting curious helps us learn to respond instead of react, and then lose the regret and the constant cycle of being down on ourselves for behaving in a way we really don't want to.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it seems so simple, but I've never thought of it like this. This is why it's so brilliant, because it's an easy read because it makes sense for everyone.
yeah.
I love that. But now when you talk about the curiosity theory, like certain things maybe being geared toward women, and then you on by your name, Martine, it says mensbreakthrough.com, and that's your new kind of more of a new venture. I don't know how new it is, but it's what you're really, you said, sinking your teeth into
Yeah.
right now. What's the difference between what you do there? Explain that again, because this is like the men's breakthrough is, why is that in existence? Why did you create this? And what do you do?
So when I was doing the personal development classes with men and women all in the class, and then we had this thing called COVID. I don't know if you ever.
Oh,
Yeah,
what's that? No,
it
I have
was
no
this
idea.
thing that happened.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I started to do stuff online and I started to do different things. And then when they were letting us get back together again, I said, I'm going to start doing my workshops again. So I would call men and I'd call women. And what happened in the conversations I had with men is they would say, Martine, you need to just do this for men. And I was like, so why? And I'm not saying one person, I'm talking 20 or 30 people said this. They said, I wanted to say something, but I didn't say it because I didn't want to say it with a woman there.
That makes sense.
So I started asking women the same thing. I said, so, how do you feel with men? I go, well, I feel a little embarrassed, sometimes, and I wouldn't say things. Would you say it more with women? Yeah, oh, yeah, because that's easier. Okay. So I decided to do that and,
Nice.
and really, really to just give it more safety, space, more safe. But that was also put together with, so when I was leading classes, I was doing coaching and stuff to executives that there's so many executives had been divorced, like that I had talked to in groups, and some of them had been divorced for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and they were still carrying the weight of the divorce, the regret, the different things that they went through. Like I was telling you earlier about when I went, when I decided to separate, I didn't do it in a way that I believe was very respectful. I did it where I blamed something. I blamed another relationship on it. And I didn't take responsibility and say, hey, the reason I'm leaving you is because the reason I want to divorce is because I want a divorce, and whatever I would say. And I haven't even figured that out, because it takes work to figure out and be honest with all that, right? So what I did is I said, hey, I fell in love with somebody, and that's what I want to do. And I didn't know the damage that would cause. I didn't know that. It took me a long time to I don't know that it's repaired, but it took me a long time to gain the respect back from my wife that from my ex-wife that I once had. That wasn't
I
easy.
think it's really it's vulnerable and real of you to just say it like it is and take responsibility and share with us like this. But in addition to that, you must have done a lot of work to have, and I read in your bio where you said you have a loving, respectful relationship with your ex-wife now.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that just didn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without work.
It didn't. It doesn't, and it didn't. But what I find is that when I'm talking to men, like, they might be mad at first. A lot of women have fooled around on them, or they fooled around, or some whatever happened, or
Yes.
whatever the dynamic. And there's a million different scenarios, right? But almost always they're mad. Almost always, I'm mad at this and I'm mad at that, and this, and bad words to her and whatever. That's almost always the case. But what's under that is I'm hurt. What's under
Mm.
that is I was in love, and it didn't work out, and I'm broken. I'm brokenhearted, and all my friends just tell me she's a bitch, and that doesn't work. That doesn't work. She might be, but that doesn't work, because you know what? I'm hurting, and men are hurting, and they don't have other men that could speak to them, that are curious, that allow them to say what they need to say in a place that's safe, that's trusting, and that's respectful, and that they can say whatever they need to say, and they can just go through whatever they need to go through, so that they can start to rebuild themselves.
I'm going to tell you something. That is so true. Women women and men hurt equally as bad, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
women are more verbal, and we're going to get together with our girlfriends, and we're going to go to therapy if we need, and we're ready to talk about it typically.
Yeah.
I mean, and men many times are raised like power through. You're a tough guy. Just suck it up.
Yeah.
Don't.
All
And
that.
that's so unfair. I just have always thought that, like, and I have a son myself, and I've always raised him to set for him. Like, I know you don't want to be a ball bag and sob all the time, but if you're sad and you feel like crying, you should cry. If you have something to say and something's bothering you, if you can't tell me, find somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should encourage men. They're going to be so much happier and better partners when they have that safe place. So you doing this, woo, that's incredible.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. I really appreciate
Oh,
that.
it's amazing.
It's a life purpose now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I even saw, look, Barry Selby, and I wanted to take notice of the people who are commenting and coming in and
Hey,
watching
Barry.
the podcast. But Barry Selby says the difference is stark. Men are not allowed to express like women. And Barry, you're right. And we can have people debate this all day and say, well, it's their own fault that they don't, whatever. But it's almost like over time, I mean, it's been I don't know, like the way boys have been raised over the years, and just naturally, I think with guys being less verbal and
Yeah.
expressive, it's true. It's not allowed, or they just can't find it to do it. And so you giving them a safe place to encourage conversation, to let it out, they're going to be happier. Barbara Coulter says, how sad is it that in 2023, men cannot embrace emotions? Amen to that, sister. I totally agree. I do. Barb, thanks for always watching and
Thank you.
supporting the podcast.
I love what you said. And the thing about the whole thing about emotions, and the the problem is a very easily solvable problem. It really is. And it has to do with language. It's real simple. It's that we don't have language that actually connects to what we feel. So it's like we're not allowed, like Barry said, we're not allowed to feel that. Well, I think that's true. And in addition to that, we don't know how to say what we're feeling. We don't know how to say, I'm feeling sad. What we do is, you made me mad. That's what we say. So we have this way of speaking where there's no ownership. There's no ownership in what I'm experiencing. And that's what the men's breakthrough is all about. That it's all about owning. It's like, I'm going to say something out of my mouth. I'm going to have an idea in my head, and I'm going to say it. And I'm going to say it for what it is. And I'm not going to use language to
Mhm.
manipulate, first off, myself.
Right.
I'm not gonna, because I'm just manipulating my own brain. I'm certainly not gonna do that. And then I'm gonna then impact you with that kind of language or those kind of thoughts. And when you learn the impact, and there's a thing called a regressive cycle. I don't talk about that in the book because my book would be 300 pages if I did the whole thing. So there's a thing called a regressive cycle. Is that when we go into reptilian mode, you we start a cycle that goes downward, and then you lose trust, and then you lose momentum, and you lose you lose the desire to even try, and then you're just stuck in a just a vicious circle, and it's a poor loop. And when
Yeah.
we get stuck in that poor loop, our brain is not working right, so we don't even have the ability to even articulate what we're going through.
Mm.
So, and then what I teach in men's breakthrough is to understand your language, not your love language, right, but your language. I'll give you a story. So, if you don't mind, I know we got to finish up pretty soon.
Oh,
So,
go. I wanna hear
so,
the story.
so Yvette used to tell me I was angry. That's what she would tell me. You're angry.
Yeah.
And I hated it when people tell me. I hate it because I never felt like I would get angry. I didn't
And
like
then
that.
they say you're being angry, and then it makes you angry.
And now I
Oh
am, right?
gosh, now I am.
So
Stop telling me I'm angry.
she would say, you're angry, and I would say, oh, okay, no, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. I just get frustrated. So she was, no, you're angry. And I'm like, I'm frustrated. So one day I got real curious, and I said, can you tell me what you mean by angry? And she said, when I was a little girl, my mother would get angry, and I would just get really scared.
Oh.
So I said, oh, whenever you're telling me you're angry, you're telling me you're scared.
Oh, wow.
You get that?
Yeah.
It's the language. See, our
Yeah.
language is not put together well. We're using something to say something because we don't know how to articulate what we really want to say.
Mm.
So I'm going to say, Debbie, you're angry. And what I'm telling you is, I'm scared. But I didn't tell you I'm scared because I didn't even know that. I'm so busy trying to protect myself from experiencing being afraid. I'm
Mm.
gonna I'm gonna throw it at you. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Yeah, it does, and language, I didn't know where you're going with that. This is
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, because what one person says, words can be interpreted so differently, from and what anger means to one person, and what emotion it strikes in, and may be different for someone else. 100%. Wow.
Almost always. It's almost like if I asked you to define the word fascinating, right? I'm taking a word like, I don't really have a definition for fascinating, but I could use the word fascinating, right?
Yeah.
But you say, Martine, what do you mean by fascinating? I'd have to actually have to stop and figure out what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Like maybe that wasn't the word to use
Yeah.
when using words. And it's like, if we're using words, we probably should have the definition of those words as an understanding. So if we're now using emotions, we probably should understand what we mean. But the problem is that I have an experience of, if you get the feelings list, right?
Mhm. Oh,
In
yeah,
the
I
book,
see it,
right?
yeah, in the book, the
So,
feeling.
so, so you have your definition for all those feelings and how you use them and how you define them. And I guarantee you, mine's are probably not the same as yours. And if they are, they're probably not always not all of them are. And you probably use emotional words different than I use emotional
Oh,
words.
totally.
Or you may have, like, if you
I
think,
have never thought of this.
yeah.
I consider myself a very deep thinker, but,
Mhm.
like, when someone uses an adjective or whatever to describe something, I have a visual in my mind of what they see and what in their own, but we're always different, right?
Yeah.
So it can be in an argument or in a deep conversation with someone where you're trying to figure something out and they're using their own words to describe, we should then take it and be curious and
Yeah,
say, what is your what do you mean angry? Like what you said to your ex-wife.
yeah.
What does that make you feel? What do you think that is? And then you were like, aha, all these years she's been calling me angry, and it's not what I consider angry. Wow. And Kelly Ann, she said such great examples of what miscommunication can do to relationships.
Yeah.
A lot of years of misunderstanding what someone's meaning can do such damage, which I think it did in your case, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. What happened is I started to look at my communications with Yvette. I started to look at those. And I started to look at like I was just basically guessing. Like when if I was going to be honest, I'm guessing what she's thinking. That's just the truth.
Mhm.
But I don't relate to it like I'm guessing. I relate to it like I know what she's saying. That's how I relate to it. So she says something and I relate to like, I know what you're talking about. And I correct her and she does the same thing. This is what you're saying. I'm like, no, we're wrong. If you think about it, I don't know how long you've been married, Debbie, but how many times has your husband said something to you and you're like, that's not what I was talking about. Happens
Yes.
all the time. It happens all
Yes.
the time. But we don't get curious and we just keep talking without getting clarity.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I want to say Nicole Young has put up a couple of comments. One I saw that she put on about her son had gone into the Marines and they make fun of guys who are expressive and emotional, which is unfortunate, but I get it, Nicole. And then she also said,
Which is an emotion though, but think about that. Making fun of somebody is an emotion.
that's right.
It's
That's
funny.
right.
Like, I'm going to make fun of you for being emotional, but I'm actually doing the same
Same
thing.
thing in a different context, in a different way.
Acceptable, like like Barry said it. I'm doing the acceptable version of it.
Oh, wow, you're right, Nicole. How cool would it be to teach this in schools? These are tools and resources that would be so beneficial because it's like you said, it's biology.
It's
It's
biology.
biology. I mean, how can you deny that? Barry Selby says a little perception checking
Yeah,
goes a long way. Martine will understand that. Yes.
yeah.
Well
We went
said,
to
Barry.
we went to school together. So we went to University of Santa Monica and studied spiritual psychology, both of us. And the perception checking is one of the things they taught, and that's what it is. Curiosity is perception checking. I'm curious. What is your perception? What is it? How do you see what's going on here? Like
Yeah.
I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm going to argue with them, but I don't even know really how they see what's happening.
Oh
But
my
I'm arguing, it's like let me argue with you, but what am I arguing for? Well, first off, I'm defending some ego thing. That's what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
then I'm arguing and I don't really have clarity. So I'm just a knucklehead over here
Yeah.
on top of more knucklehead, and it's like,
It's so true. I don't even know. I don't know why it makes me laugh because I've been there. Like I'm gonna argue with someone that's not even we don't even know what we're each other are talking about. What the heck? Like this
yeah.
is so true.
But we don't operate as though we don't know.
Right. We act like I know exactly what you mean. You're saying Martine's like, Debbie, you don't. You do not know what I mean.
Yeah.
Read my book.
So we stop listening, right? So now my so now if I look at the two heads, right? So now my trigger is I'm not even in the same conversation. I'm probably now triggered by the fact that I'm not being respected or you're not really listening to me. So I have needs that aren't being met, being understood, being appreciated, being respected, whatever those needs are that are not, and they're firing at all cylinders.
Yeah.
So in our conversation, I'm having multiple needs that are not being met. And so why do I get madder and madder? Because it's this need, this need, this need, this need, this need. I'm not even having the same conversation to you. I'm over here having some conversation in my head that's automatic.
Wow.
And it's happening. I'm not controlling it. It's happening on its own.
Wow. And another thing you said earlier and discussions that you had with your wife too, or like on the way home, like you immediately when you start allowing that to happen, you spiral down then
Yeah.
you start having all these scenarios play out in your head of why this is happening. She probably doesn't love me. This
Yeah.
has been like we've been married forever. She doesn't even understand me. I hate when she says it's this like this all the time. It's going to be like this tomorrow, and it's going to be like this next week. It's been like this for four. You know what I mean? And also, I think in the book, one little part too, we can do this. Not, I mean, outside of a loving relationship, even in friendships, work relationships, where you're not communicating the same. You don't understand what the words are coming out of their mouth. We're
Yeah.
perceiving it differently.
Yeah.
And then I guess we all got to get curious, people. We all got to get curious and ask, what do you mean by that? What is your definition of anger? What is your definition of productivity? All of these things.
And what's going on with me? I worked with an insurance company the other day, and the receptionist is like, yeah, they call, people call and they're so stupid and they did, it's like, wow, okay. And so like, well, this woman named Annie, she always calls and she's like just dumb. And so it's this like story before Annie even calls. And so Annie has she's like doomed from the start, right?
No doubt.
And so we're in the class, we're like at the third hour of the class, and she's like, oh my God, I know what Annie wants. And
Oh,
she's like,
wow.
what does she want? She goes, she just wants to understand her policy. That's all. It's like, and so all this, she's dumb and she's an idiot and all this thing is just going on. It's like, but then you get empathy. Like, I
Mhm.
understand what she wants.
Yeah.
That's what, why don't I just give her what she wants?
Right.
Or I
But
can,
instead,
sit
she
there
went
talking about her.
went on this whole other tangent about what she thinks she wants, and
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing. Martine, I can not everybody that rolls off the tongue so nice. Martin Lopez is in the house telling us to be curious, raise the roof. Let's go. Let's go. I really want you to pull out your saxophone. After I read in there that you're a saxophone, that, and then here's the book. You can get it on. I got mine on Amazon. I'm gonna be writing a review. I'm gonna finish reading it
Thank
and
you.
write a review on this. Well, we are getting close to time to wrap it up. So before we go, I think that the show is called Find It. And it's about finding something in life to help us grow and be better. And with you, I know you found curiosity to help in a lot of ways. But in addition to that, in your life, Martine, what have you found that you can share with us to help inspire us to find it too?
Well, it was the weirdest thing. It was this thing called self-love. It was this weird thing that my friend always talks about. And I always thought, yeah, of course I love myself. And one day I realized I didn't love myself. And when I found that, that was cool.
That's amazing. And self-love is important. How do you find it?
I just noticed that I was being mean to myself. I was just being mean in the ear. And I just thought, I don't need to do that. I just don't want to do that. So I wanted to start doing the opposite. So in my meditation, I was like, well, what's the opposite of this thing I'm doing? Well, that's certainly not an expression of love. That's not an expression of love. So what is? And then I had to like figure out what is. And then I was like, wow, I started to love myself. And then, I actually would call Yvette and then say, I think this is what happened. I don't know that this is what happened in a relationship,
Yeah.
but I think this is what happened. I didn't love myself. So when you were happy, I resented your happiness. And
Wow.
it's like, and we're so far gone now, and, but it, but it's become an opportunity for healing. That's what it's become.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and your realness
Thank you.
and your beautiful name that I tried to butcher, Martine.
I'll
Martine,
be my mom and dad for that one.
I love it. All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up, but I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of everything that you brought to this podcast. It's amazing. You guys, I will definitely be making clips of this and put it on Spotify. And anybody who's watching, share this out so other people can be blessed with this amazing information that's very easy to understand. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, but man, when you explain it the way you do, it's just brilliant. So I so appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I want to wrap it up tonight. And I hope to see you all again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And it's a wrap. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yay.
That floats around me, keeping me